Pretty much everything. I said pretty much everything. It's going to be interesting.
I mean, technically him signing the closing statement is the permission, but I never even saw a closing statement to review. Like, I never even got one to review.
I don't know. I feel like I did, and either way, it's all good. Everything's gonna work out, but it's scary for that to go down like that. I need to order this stuff for Fertile. Actually, I'm just gonna point it out to them.
Where did you get your fucking shirt from? I want it. I want it now.
I'll buy you one.
No, no, no.
Says
Where?
What's the meeting passcode? Do you know?
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Okay, is there not started the video, right? Because I see people talking, but I just wanted to make sure I could.
I muted everyone. There was just a lot going on.
Okay, good.
Hey, Tina,
Okay, thank you.
Tina, I just made you co-host, honey. Hi.
Hi, everybody. I know we're getting ready. We're getting waiting for Leo. We said 10 o'clock, so we've got 4 more minutes. You know,
Okay.
realtors we're traditionally late, so you guys are all the really successful ones because you're early. I love it.
This
I
is
love
true.
it. I love it.
All right.
Right? These all are successful people on time and early. I'd love to hear where everybody's from. Put it in the chat box. Like, where are you guys tuning in from? I would love to know. Are you here in Raleigh? Because obviously I'm located in Raleigh, but Facebook reaches everybody. So I'd love to see where you guys are coming from. Oh, Texas. I love it. I love it. Good morning, Charlotte. Thank you, Jen. Love
It is
it.
lovely to see this many people on, isn't it? Like,
It is. Well, this is a really important subject. I mean, you know, we've got so much confusion, which, you know, you've got, I think you've got people that are like, okay, I got this. This is great. We're moving forward. I want to read a text from one of our leaders in one of our chat groups. I won't say who, but it was just such a positive text. I'm going to read it this morning because it just shows like,
Yeah.
you know, what everybody is.
those just jumping on, please mute yourself in the background. Thank you.
Jessica Dillon, but anyway, we've got a you know, a leader that basically said yesterday during our normal Tuesday meeting, we spent the entire time going through the changes and aligning on our team's approach. The team had great engagement, and the importance of alignments on the items we selected over the weekend really brought the new changes in our team's way of doing things prior to getting together. Keeping that in mind, the changes for us were a bit easier to swallow as we have had a zero tolerance policy in place for 24 months, now related to buyer agent agreements, and our system of communicating our fee as a buyer responsibility. The biggest relief for them was knowing we have a plan, we have a system to execute that plan, and we have their backs. We are now role-playing setup over the next 30 days to build the muscle, ensure our buyer consultations are tweaked to match the changes and are ironclad, and to provide clear education to our clients. Instead of anxiety around what a seller is paying, we are focused on our fee, our value, our systems. I shared with them that as long as expectations are set with our buyers around our fee and the expectation that they are ultimately responsible for that fee, what's being offered on each what's being offered on each house is irrelevant until negotiations, because like today, a seller is no longer obligated to accept an offer that doesn't meet their net expectations. So while they may tell us the seller is open to paying X percentage, until the offer is signed, that number isn't guaranteed. It will all come down to the agent's negotiation ability. Sure, we are all realistic and understand we will have buyers in a tough spot. But just like today, we are problem solvers, and we also have to make sure we manage expectations from the jump. This will require sacrifices in some case by our buyers, including moving on from a house if a negotiation doesn't work for their unique situation. But that's the same today. Sometimes numbers just don't work. Remember the craziness of 2020 and 2022? We all survived, we pivoted, we managed expectations, buyers made sacrifices, and we all grew together. I'm even more confident now we have each other with this leadership group to set the tone for how we deliver value to others out there that are consumed by fear and drama and negativity. So we're pivoting. I mean, that's really it. And I think it's time to, you know, come together as agents and really just share and stop being negative about a change. And I think when you hear change, fear ensues, and then people get crazy. So we've got 340 people on. I have to expect in the next minute or two or three, we're going to have more and more people joining us from all different brokerages. So this is a safe place. We want to invite Leo on. So Michelle, have you seen our fearless leader join in?
yeah, let me see here.
I'm here. I am here.
There he is.
Oh, there he is. There
All
he is.
right. Yes,
Welcome, welcome.
welcome. Let me just take an order of business. We'd like to hear Leo clearly. This is the point of having him here, y'all. So please be so kind as to mute yourself and save your chats for the chat box. We're going to do our best to go through the questions and concerns. I don't think Leo needs much prompting. He has become quite versed at these conversations, and the timing of having you here, Leo, I'm so appreciative that you're able to do this and to find time to accommodate our
No,
audience.
I'm grateful to be here. I just got off a plane last night. I spoke at Inman, and I had some very choice words for a lot of leaders in the room. So I'll tell you what I shared with them. And as soon as I hang up with you, I'm jumping in the car, and I'm going to do this with Tom Ferry. I'm going to keep talking until everyone listens, because this is super important and it's meaningful to the way that you feed your family. So I'm ready to jump in as soon as you guys unleash me here.
I love it. Well, let me introduce Mr. Leo, because I've got his bio, because I think it's important, when people say, why do you and Michelle, work for this company? Why do you guys, stay 5-6 years when people jump brokerages every 3 years? It's because of leadership. And I think her and I have had the pleasure to be included in a lot of those conversations privately, daily, weekly, and we get to see it. And I think sometimes when you're an outsider looking in, you don't get to see it, so you don't have context. But Leo, so he started his career at 19. First of all, I have to say, you've never had a job. This is your first real job. Congratulations, Leo. Such an overachiever. But by the age of 28, he became the #1 Keller Williams agent worldwide. Over his 15-year career in sales, he sold over 4,000 homes with him and his team. So in 2012, he co-founded Washington Capital Partners, transforming into one of the largest private lending companies on the East Coast with over $2 billion in hard money loans. In 2016, he co-founded Remine, which I know a lot of you use. That's the platform that quickly became the fastest growing MLS platform in the industry, achieving 80% market share and attracted over 1.1 million users, which it is still in use today. After exiting both of those, right, Leo joined EXP as an executive leadership position and was named what were you named? What was your first title here?
First title was President of Affiliate Services, then Chief Strategy Officer, then most recently your CEO.
Your CEO. So he just, he was back there in the weeds. We'd always be like, what is he doing back there? And we'd have bam, 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 program after program after program. I mean, really, I didn't know Leo at first because, he was sort of like just back there in the background. Yeah. But I mean, we just kept developing and developing. And when I first met him, it shows you how much I politic. I have to tell the story, Leo. He came up to me and I was at an event and I had just stopped talking to, I just got off stage and I'm talking. I didn't know who he was. And he's standing there so patiently. And I turned around. I'm like, yes, can I help you? And he's like, you don't know who I am, do you? I texted you. I said, no, I don't. But I soon got to know who he is. So people have recognized him very, very often. So he has been recognized 5 times in the Swampole Power 200, SP 200, ranking amongst the most powerful and influential executives in real estate. In 2020, alongside your wife, Ariana, you co-founded the Pareja Family Foundation. The foundation awards scholarships to disadvantaged women and minorities, enabling them to attend a 6-month tech boot camp. This initiative aims to help them enter the tech industry without college debt, potentially doubling or tripling their income. Your wife is a powerhouse. She is amazing. You guys are amazing. Thank you for your leadership and just thank you for being able to make decisions quickly. So I'm going to give you the floor because I know that you've got a lot to share with us today. So welcome.
I do, and thank you. And I don't know how much time people have, so I'll talk until you guys kick me out. But again, like I said, I'm going to jump from here, and then right after Tom Ferry, I got to come back and do an earnings call because it's earnings day. So let's just jump right into it. So the very first thing I want to point out is that I actually completely disagree with the settlement and the lawsuit. I think the plaintiff's attorneys are a bunch of ambulance chasers who saw a big paycheck and they don't actually care about the consumer. So I said that. I just want that to be abundantly clear. I'm not sure that actually helps the consumer. When the news broke, it was March 15th, it was a Friday, and I was trying to process it. I started getting emails and texts and workplace chats from a lot of you. And it was real fear about how I'm going to feed my family and how am I going to do this? And this is the analogy that I've given everybody. I feel like I turned 16 years old, got a driver's license, started driving on the highways and went exactly the posted speed limits. And all of a sudden, a group of outsiders told us that we're a bunch of criminals and we have to abide by these new rules. And that is, I don't know who just took control of the screen, but that was not me.
Yeah,
Um,
I don't,
let-
let me,
somebody's
sorry.
sharing their screen. Look, because I'm going to need to share the screen here in a second. So,
Let's stop
but
screen share, Charity. There we go.
there we go.
Yep.
Okay, but this is life. And one of the things I've learned is life is 10% what happens and 90% how you react to it. So that weekend on March 16th and 17th, Glenn and I and our general counsel were trying to figure out what to do, what to say. And as you remember, a lot of companies didn't say a thing because they were scared of how that would affect their negotiations and their process with their litigation. And Glenn said, you need to do what is best for our people and talk to them directly. So say whatever you have to say, and we'll take whatever risks we have to take. That Monday, I went live and we had 53,000 concurrent viewers, which, by the way, doesn't confuse me that I'm special or think I have all the answers. I think it just proves how collectively we are all starving for information. So this hit us out of left field in a way because we're being told to do the business differently than we've been doing it. And so it's important that you guys understand, I am one of you. This is how I've always fed my family. This is how I started every business I've ever been in. And the amount of misinformation and noise we're hearing is fear because people are genuinely feeling vulnerable that they won't be able to provide for their family. So I actually have a lot of empathy and why I'm willing to talk to anybody and everybody in our company, outside of our company. The really cool part yesterday is I was leaving Inman. I had a bunch of people stop me in the hallway and say, we're actually going to follow suit. We're going to educate. Thank you for leading. So again, hang in there. This is unprecedented. And what I say to people is none of us know how this is going to go. It's never happened before. And as an industry that cooperates, because we are cooperating with our competitors all the time. And it's probably the only industry I know that does that, because I truly believe both buyers and sellers need representation to hold their hand through this process. So the only reason we actually wrote forms is because of the lack of leadership we've witnessed across our industry. We are 17, 18 days out from this change, and half the states we operate have not given us new forms. A portion, or the vast majority of the ones that have, are extremely confusing and problematic and are doing exactly what we were accused of by the plaintiff's attorneys. Commission sharing at its core is the argument for the plaintiffs. So now I'm going to screen share because I actually have the NAR settlement agreement FAQs up. Can you guys see that?
Yep,
So
see it.
it's live. I'm on their link. This is the most important paragraph for you guys to understand. Broker to broker commission sharing, as we know, is dead on the MLS. In all its detail, it eliminates and prohibits broker to broker compensation. It eliminates the fields for any and all subscribers. It requires all MLSs to delete the fields. It requires MLSs not to create, facilitate, or support any non-MLS mechanism to provide this. It prohibits the use of MLS data and data feeds directly or indirectly to establish or maintain platforms that would support it off the MLS. To reinforce that MLS participant must not enable. Very specific language. Requires compensation disclosures to sellers. Requires MLS participants working to buyer to enter into a written agreement to tour property prior to writing a contract to return the property. That is the most important paragraph, where we've seen a bunch of backlash and people saying, hey, this is contradictory. It is contradictory. So let's scroll down to paragraph 32. What should listing brokers advise their clients about a prohibition of offer of compensation? Listing brokers should inform their clients that the offers of compensation will no longer be an option on the MLS. This change will not prevent offers of cooperative compensation off the MLS, and it will not prevent sellers from offering buyer concessions on an MLS, concessions to a buyer closing, and compensation would continue to be negotiable and should always be negotiated between the agents and the buyers and the consumers. This is the crux of why a lot of competitors and talking heads have said, well, why would you go so far to prohibit broker to broker compensation if it's allowable under paragraph 32? NAR has one set of rules. MLSs have another set of rules. And then we have the commentary from the DOJ. So about a month or two ago, California Association of Realtors was putting out broker-to-broker compensation, and the DOJ filed a cease and desist and said, don't do that. We don't like the language. It's unclear. So coming up to a couple weeks before this is all about to happen, with the lack of forms, and then the forms we've seen come out that are so confusing, we said, we are just going to take a stand as a business. We have the right as a company to make a business decision to say, we are not going to do broker to broker at all. Now, that doesn't mean we're not going to work with buyer's agents. That doesn't mean the seller can't offer compensation direct seller to buyer broker. Follow along. The crux of the litigation from the plaintiff's attorneys is commission sharing. What I promise everyone watching this, what I promise you, is that after August 17th, there is a crop of current and new attorneys watching what we do. And what the last thing anybody wants to do is be exposed to a new class of plaintiffs called buyers. This feels like semantics and just words and details, but it matters. We are no longer going to do broker to broker. But if your seller wants to advertise off MLS following your MLS rules, that's perfectly allowed. Our position is if it's allowed within your local market and you're following the MLS rules, it's perfectly okay. Just we've shared all of our docs. We put out, did everybody get an email from me yesterday? Please check your inbox.
Yes, we
We're
did.
giving you the paperwork in order to do it. Now, very important stuff to unpack. The reason I'm obsessed with talking about this and making sure you have all the paperwork is the enforceability. If you guys would go back to March and May and any time I've talked about this, as soon as the stuff happened, my very first question is, okay, how does this all work? Who's going to police it? At NAR mid-year, when they had the NAR with like 800 people in this, the 800 person meeting where the whole thing, they rolled out that said the MLSs are going to police this. What that means to you, this is going to turn into a revenue creating opportunity for MLSs. Yes, we've already gotten notifications of the first MLSs. Any mention, and again, there's like 600 of them in this country, so your MLS could vary. But the largest MLS in the country sent out an email last week saying that any infraction of any reference or attempt to reference buyer compensation, broker to broker compensation on the MLS will be an immediate $2,500 fine with no warning. And your listing will be deleted out of the MLS. We've had other MLSs tell us it's going to be a $5,000 fine to the agent and $7,500 fine to the broker. We've had other MLSs say 3 strikes and you're kicked out of the MLS. Guys, I don't want to be in the forms business. I don't want to be in your business. I am a platform that empowers you to build whatever size dream you want, and I'm here to create less friction in your life. But this was not possible if we just held our breath and stuck our heads in the sand like we're seeing a lot of other people do. I don't want to be any more in your business than I need to be. I just want to protect you. I don't want to create another instance where you can be sued, where we can be sued, or more tactically and operationally is be fined out of existence. These MLSs, there are the 2 pieces. There is going to be an audit requirement on us that we have a buyer broker in order to pay you. One MLS told us and said, if we don't have the right form in our file as the broker, we are to return the commission to the seller. So we're not doing this for fun. We're doing this to protect your business. We want to empower you guys, and I want to educate every single person. When I was in the hallway, the amount of broker owners who came up to me and said, hey, thank you for saying it out loud. And I said, can you please just say it on the internet? It's getting kind of lonely out here, right? We need to prepare ourselves for what's coming. We didn't choose any of this, but we can't pretend it's not happening. So the MLS rules are what I'm most worried about, right? There's 2 sides of it. You have to have a signed buyer broker representation agreement in order to be compensated. It needs to be prior to then the offer being written and the property being shown. That's what the rules say. Again, I'm not opining on how I feel about it because I honestly don't think the buyer broker should be stuck in someone's face prior to seeing a property for the first time. But here we are. The second thing is broker to broker is no longer being permissible by our company, but that does not mean I fully expect you guys to work with buyer's agents. I fully expect you to cooperate or work with listing agents, but the difference is the mechanism that we all grew up with is dead. And that's the part I need to unpack for you guys. The unilateral offer of compensation, which was the promise that you would be paid said fee for bringing a buyer, that was actually the stickiest part of the MLS function. If it was advertised X and it was listed for Y, you would be paid that percentage at settlement. And if there was a problem, you took them to arbitration with the MLS, correct? Raise your hand. You guys all probably experienced that at some point. That mechanism is dead because that field is deleted. So going forward, you got to make sure that the contract reflects the consideration, whether it is seller concession to the buyer to compensate your agreement, or it's seller directed commission to the buyer brokerage company. But each contract now has to have this part of the contract. It has to be part of the contract. And again, I go back to MLS rules. I just showed you the ambiguity of the actual rules themselves. People are saying, well, I could do it off MLS. Well, please understand the definition. The MLSs are saying it has to be 2 clicks removed. What does that mean? It can't be a shortcut from this to that, because then you'll still be fined, right? What you guys need to understand is you must now have a buyer broker signed. So this is the sentence I've been saying till I get blue in the face. Treat your buyers like you treat your sellers. Every buyer consultation should look and feel exactly like a listing presentation. You should be sitting down with a consumer, assuming it is competitive, that you are going to be competing with other agents presenting their value proposition. You should have a very detailed presentation that identifies your value proposition, what you are doing, and for what fee, with an expiration date. And I say put on your hats and like a listing agent. Imagine going to a listing presentation and pretend, we were just going to say, hey, when the offer comes in, I'll find out what I'm willing to get paid. Or like, let's just do this for as long as it takes, or maybe we get tired of each other, right? That's not how we treat sellers, because the MLSs won't let us. The rules on listings are part of the MLS rules. You have to have a signed agreement with adequate showing times and the compensation being shared. It was all those specific details. And this is the world we're in now. So and also, guys, this is being covered by the major media. I'm talking to Time later today. I spoke to the Associated Press, CNBC. I'm talking to CNN on Monday. Like, there is a ton of interest from consumers, and it is super important that you guys actually understand the details and the nuances. Consumer Federation of America gave us a lot of press for our buyer agreement because of simple and clear and in plain English. We are doing the same thing with our listing agreement. The way it was written so a lawyer doesn't have to translate it for you. But again, just be aware that there is a lot of attorneys paying attention to our industry, and we don't want to create that opportunity again where we create more liability for you guys. So again, you are no longer collecting X and then sharing it. You are collecting your fee for your services rendered. And at this exact same time, the seller can instruct you to offer compensation to the buyer broker directly. We are just getting out of the middleman business of collecting it and sharing it, right? Because this is the other thing that's super important for you guys to understand. The buyer agent is no longer allowed to receive any more compensation than what's in their agreement. That's an important rule change. The buyer broker is entitled to what is in their agreement. So in a way, there's a couple ways to think about this. One is you sit with the seller, and by the way I'm advising everyone to script this and to explain this is prior to August 17th, this is the way the world worked. After August 17th, this is the way the world worked. So you educate, this is my fee for the services rendered. A couple of things can happen, Mr. and Mrs. Seller. We can just say, hey, we're willing to offer compensation. And, you know, the verbiage that has been approved by most MLSs, and again, this is a moving target, so I'll say this today, and we can find out that this is no longer allowable next week. But as of right now, you can put in the MLS remarks, seller is willing to entertain any and all
Should I
requests,
go sit down
period.
at the pedicure or?
Can somebody mute? Put it in the purchase contract. So again, you will see variations of this, but some folks may say, hey, we're willing to entertain concessions, put it in the contract. And some people will actually probably offer a seller directed compensation. Again, and even if another company is offering broker to broker, you can say, thank you, Mr. or Mrs. Listing Agent. We will put it as part of our contract and we will not be accepting broker to broker. Again, sometimes it feels actually silly, the nuances here on the language, but it matters, y'all. We are very focused on making sure that we're protecting you and our company going forward so we don't create additional liability. So a couple more things and then I'll leave it all for Q&A. I don't want to be in this business of writing forms. If other states create forms that we think protect you, well, and by the way, you are able to use your forms. Just get with your broker, and there are parts of the forms I don't want you to use, specifically the broker to broker sharing part. But if your state has forms that you want to use and you need us to talk you through that, you can do that. It's always about choice. But that's why we wrote forms that were simple to understand, that we're able to teach across the country because we operate in so many different states. I think somebody asked me to state the language again. Seller is willing to entertain any and all request, period. Put it in the purchase contract, period. Okay, those were my big ones that I wanted to get out. This is about education. This is about education. This is about education. This is about education. And it will be to the consumer. It'll be to other agents. It'll be to, and again, we are in a cooperating industry where we deal with our competitors in a cooperative way. I don't think that changes. I think that's to the benefit of the consumer. I believe, you know, everyone should have representation. But I'll pause right there, and I think I'll open it up for some Q&A.
Thank you, Leo. Tina had to jump in the car and head to the airport. So I just want to say thank you again for coming on. Lots of chat in the box and hands are raised. Thank you for sending out that email last night. I'm highlighting this one form here, this direct compensation form that was submitted or shared with us last night. And I think this is one of the forms that spells it out most clearly. It's a compensation agreement that this form should act as a confirmation that we're holding escrow for compensation on the buy side.
And Michelle, that form, we actually wrote it a couple months ago,
Yeah.
specifically for FHA and VA. Remember, that was the big concern. And I said, I will call the VA myself and have a conversation on how to prepare a document for that. That's what that was for. Again, I'll say it as clearly as possible. Each MLS will probably roll out different rules. And this is the hardest part for us because you guys mastermind in mastermind groups, whether it's internal, external, and it's touch and go. CRMLS a month ago had a field called concessions that allowed you to actually put a dollar amount. You could say $15,000 concession paid by the seller. Last week, they took it back. And now they switched it to a yes and no. Sellers offering concessions. This is another very important kind of conversation piece when I've been talking to agents. Yeah. How many times have you gotten a call from a buyer's agent and said, hey, Ed, will the seller take below list? Will they accept a 60-day rent back? Can I have the hot water, the hot tub in the back? Mm-hmm. And what do we all say?
Write the offer.
Put it in the contract. Put it in the contract. Put it in the contract.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, gotcha. Thank you for that.
So Michelle, if you want to moderate and just start, I don't know if
Yeah,
you want to do
absolutely.
unmuting. Again, and by the way, I feel like I've been on the phone with a lot of you individually 12 hours a day, and I will continue doing that until we get through this. And again, I will promise you that by December, we'll all forgotten this. It'll be new. It'll be the new normal. And I've been getting lots of questions from major media. It's like, well, what's it going to look like? Or what's the new fee going to be? And you know what my answer is? The new fee will be what the new fee is.
Great.
If a company or a vendor provides a service for too low, they go out of business. If a company or service holds a price higher than the market can bear, you go out of business. That's capitalism. A service provider will provide a service for a fee that's acceptable to a consumer, and you find equilibrium. The fee will be what the fee will be, but I truly believe that consumers will choose to be represented by professionals at a disproportionate rate.
Great. Charity, I know you're also co-host on this right now, so thank you. If you can moderate the chat and see if there's anything that needs to float to the top. I'm going to go with the order of hands raised. I think it was a crapshoot between Ed Kaminsky and Anna Powell, so we're going to go with Ed on here first. Go ahead, Ed. Do you have some questions?
Yes. So Leo, I'm trying to understand what you mean by you're not going to do broker to broker, and explain that. So are you saying that we won't pay the buyer's agent from EXP buyer, but we'll pay the buyer, and the buyer pays the broker?
Yeah, no, it's so good question, and this was an interesting one. I was talking through to somebody the other day. I think mechanically this is how it's always worked, because we look at the HUD-1, each side has their fee, seller and buyer. What we've done in the entire time I've been licensed for 23 years is someone would go to a listing appointment and collect X, and you would collect it on behalf of both the buy side and the listing side. If you look at our new listing agreement, it actually says, this is what I'm charging you for my listing services, period. Now, if you want to use the buyer, the seller direct to broker, or you can wait until the buyer broker requests commission, concession, whatever you want to put it as in the contract, credit towards their fees. Again, it will come from the seller. On the HUD-1, it will probably behave very similarly to what's happened, but and Ed, this is where some people say, this is literally semantics, and my answer is yes. We're just saying you are negotiating your seller fees, then the seller has the option to either offer one out of the gate, not offer one out of the gate, say it's negotiable, present it with the offer. But Ed, this is the truth going forward. It has to be negotiated into each contract, because the unilateral offer of compensation, the mechanism we grew up with, the enforceability apparatus that was built into the MLS is gone. And that's not a Leo thing. That's every MLS in the country. That is paragraph 19 of the FAQs. So I've been working on drafting new listing contracts, looking at this, and I'm just feeling compelled to just put in, let's call it 5% commission as the listing fee. So we have that conversation. That's what at some point, we're likely going to make an offer of compensation to the buyer so they can pay their buyer's broker, and we'll remove it from that 5%. Can I do that? So no. So you would do whatever part of that 5% Ed was going to keep goes in one field. And if you were going to make an offer, if the seller is going to make an offer, you use the form Michelle just showed you, and you do it for the buyer side. At the time of the listing. Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
So, and
I think this is the biggest point of contention, Leo. I think the biggest confusion is exactly what Ed said for so many realtors, and we kind of simplify it, but I think it's just like, we're so used to collecting 5, 6, 7% and then delegating what part of that fee goes to the other broker. Now we're saying, just negotiate your fee. If you're 3%, 4%, that's my fee, my professional fee. Seller, what would you like to offer the buyer agent, whether it's concession, compensation, it goes on a separate form. So I think that when it says EXP will no longer allow broker to broker, that's where I think that big crux is. And
exactly. And we could spend the entire time talking about this, because this is super important, right, Ed? But this is the distinction. Let's say you offer X, Ed. Remember, mechanically, the agent's only allowed to collect what is in their buyer rep agreement. So it actually doesn't actually matter what you're offering. It has to be. And by the way, some of you will probably have a higher number that's being offered, right? How many of you showed a property that had a much lower number than your professional fee may be worth for what the services you provide? And now you can actually include it in the contract and have it be part of the negotiation. And it gets you out of middlemaning that.
Well, I've got the mic, the offer to be paid when the buyer is unrepresented. Is this coming up a lot where buyers are going to come in and not want representation?
So we put it in there because it's part of the conversation with the settlement. I fully expect that there are consumers watching all the media that we're all watching saying, hey, I chose not to be represented and we're just having you address it up front in case it comes up, which again is different than dual agency. So this would be an unrepresented party who's because as you do your listing presentation, it is very important that you guys actually communicate all this to your customers and saying, hey, there is going to be a portion of the population who read something on mainstream news and says, I choose not to be represented. What would you like me to do with that party? Right? Because there's still 105 tasks according to NAR that are required in order to who's going to fill out the contract, who's going to unlock the door, who is going to do all that stuff. And so it is important that that is spoken for and accepted, right? Because if that person, again, the whole point is the buyer needs to be able to negotiate. In this example, that person is unrepresented. And so you're addressing that concern with the seller the day of the listing.
Can we put in, I saw your language, but can we put in agent remarks buyer compensation offered? Can we use that
Yes, sir.
language?
No, and by the way, Ed, you belong to CRMLS. Read the email they sent you last Friday. They will fine you $2,500 and zap your listing out of the MLS. And they're using AI to do it. There is no warning. It'll be automatic.
Can I say we like buyer's agents?
Guys, like again, this is where the internet gets, you've seen all the memes that the real estate accounts are creating. This will be a very expensive joke for some of you.
Got it. Okay. All right.
I'm just going to put call Leo.
There we go. Probably.
Call Ed.
Call Ed. There we go. All right. Up next, Anna Powell, so patient. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Leo, I watched Kendall Bonner's interview with Veronica about 2 times all the way through, and I wanted to clarify a couple things. We have every transaction that's pending active on both sides, listing and buyers. And my understanding is if the contract was written and executed prior to 8/17, that the compensation already prearranged from those listing agents can be shared on both sides. Kendall made it seem like that was open-ended as long as the contract was executed before and that we don't have to get all of those pending contracts in compliance. Is that true?
That is what we know today. And so that is, I'm going to keep saying it, like, whenever you guys say Leo said, well, Leo, like somebody said, well, Leo said in May, I'm like, yeah, what I said in May, it doesn't apply today anymore, right? We are dealing with real-time information because what Leo said in May is we weren't going to be able to have off MLS compensation advertisement. A bunch of MLSs have said, hey, we're not enforcing that. Because again, what I said back in March and I said in April and May, I said, yeah, these rules are rules, but what is the penalty? What is the enforceability? That's actually very much a concern, right? I'm licensed, or I held broker's licenses in 2 states. And one state, the penalty for something was $1,000 fine, and the exact same infraction in the other state I was licensed was up to 1 year in prison. So my question is always like, what are the enforceability on rules, and who's going to police them, and how do we enforce them?
Yeah, we are working to go ahead and get all of those in compliance where we can. We are running into that that objection from listing agents that have 5% or 6% or any fee that they've negotiated on their exclusive right to sell. That pushback is, well, I've already gotten this, like I can't use your forms. And so I guess I would ask you, just tactfully, like, what does that conversation look like from us other than just an education piece? How do we reiterate clearly that the compensation must be coming from the seller, particularly on these transactions that are already in play?
Yeah, so I think anything that's currently under contract, and again, I will defer to your state brokers, and like the ones who have a relationship with me, I will respond. So message me on Workplace and I'll have somebody from the broker team reach out and we can figure that out. As I understand it, everything prior to that date just closes the way it does. We've provided you a addenda to transition active properties. And just so you guys know how real this is, I've gotten messages from the MLSs instructing me and to then like confirm that I've destroyed commission information in our IDX and Val feeds for listings, right? Because right now our websites are powered by MLS data. They've said, I need written receipt and you confirming that this information has been destroyed as of this date. So very serious. We are providing you all the paperwork. And again, like there's much information, many other things, as Tina said, I'd probably rather be working on, like Revenos and all the other tools I acquire and build for you guys. That is what I like doing most of the time. I never intended to be in the forms business.
Thank you. Super helpful. Appreciate you.
Leo, I want to call on another question, but I want to be mindful of time. How you said you'll be on for a bit, but I don't know what your hard stop is.
I can keep going.
Okay. All right. Because Charity has a list and I think she could be quite efficient. So I just want to, you know, squeeze as many in as we can as possible. Justin, take it away. You're up.
Awesome. Hey, Leo, appreciate this. I agree with you. I think, you know, 2 months from now, this is water under the bridge and we've got a plan of attack and kind of understand the barriers that we're dealing with. On another note, like what is yours and EXP's both relationship and thoughts on NAR and our local boards as a whole? I feel like a lot of us are losing faith in that they are operating in our best interest. And and we're seeing, I think it was it Denver that had VC interest, you know, and taking it over, and it's going to be a money grab. And so what's the
yeah,
play?
so I said this on a live previously. I said NAR provides us MLSs and forms. The second they stop doing either one or both, I'm open to the conversation. But again, I'm just creating a couple forms and it's a massive headache, right? The purchase and sale agreement in 50 states, it's a whole nother beast. There's all kinds of requirements in each state. And again, I've said this before and I'll say it again. I think the way we do real estate in North America with the perfect set of information that is MLS rules. MLSs provide this platform where we actually have a perfect set of data that says 3 bedrooms, 2 bath, and we have a definition. A definition of a bedroom has a closet, a door, and a window with egress of over 44-inch windowsill and 60 feet on the egress, right? There are other countries where you walk in and, you know, they take liberties with all kinds of definitions, right? We have a standardized marketplace that's enforced with rules, and that is super, super important. But cooperation and compensation was a big piece of what MLSs did. So again, I think the very honest answer is we shall see, Justin.
And that, like on that front, are they amending code of ethics to go more hand in hand with this new settlement and some of the new terms? Like, I mean, I'm having conversations like, how does, you know, the long-standing idea of procurement fit into all of this? Like, I don't know kind of where that stands. A lot of things are going to have to shake.
100% procuring. Like, I would like to see how procuring costs can be enforced outside of who has the buyer broker.
Right.
Hi, this is Dave. Sorry I missed your call. Please go ahead and leave a message here, and I'll get.
Thank you, Heather. All right, the Adamsey team, you're up.
Hey, Michelle. Hey, Leo.
Hello.
Rich here. One question I just thought about once you said what you said is, what if a buyer doesn't realize they signed multiple buyer agency agreements out there towards the procuring cause? Like, how would they know? Like, if they walked into like open house, signed something, and then signed another one, how do you know which one will be?
Yeah, so that was one of the reasons why we got so much praise for our buyer agreement, because, you know, there are very confusing owners buyers agreements. We made ours super clear, so we had some definitions, and you guys got to remember, we don't know what we don't know yet. There is so much of this that will now play out, and there will be examples and case law and all the stuff that comes with any massive change, and it's very prudent to make sure that we listen, we pay attention, we update. I am completely okay with saying, hey, that was probably not the best way to do it. Let's amend it. Let's improve it. We rolled out the first buyer rep agreement, I think in 14 days, and I think we're already on version 2. I fully expect to have probably version 2 of the listing agreement in a month, once you guys have actually used it, given us feedback. I'm seeing in the comments, secret shoppers. I fully expect that lawyers, plaintiffs, attorneys will be calling agents and seeing what they say, what they don't say.
Absolutely. And now EXP listing contracts, you suggest getting them signed along with our board at the same time to have like.
So great question. And it's going to be state specific, because some states have put out really good stuff, like Austin Board of Realtors, but others it's super confusing. And so we went through the super painful process of preparing listing agreements that work in all 50 states. So you don't have to use your state. You can use purely our forms. You prefer to use yours, that actually have that, we've worked with and explained to you how we want you to use your local forms. You can do that as well. We've always been about choice and empowering you guys to do what is best for your business.
Absolutely. All right. Great answer. Thank you. And then 2 more questions. I'll let you go. Will the buyer side of the contracts change in any format, since there's like pre-existing like commission fields? Do we have to worry about anything on the buy side contracts?
So purchase and sale contracts will still be executed, and then we'll have additional forms to make sure that we've given you language for the purchase contract. Like, for example, seller is going to credit Exp Realty X dollars or percentages with the exact language we've put out, but to the effect of saying, there's a seller credit payable to Exp Realty to cover this fee, again, per the purchaser's request. And that's how we're doing it.
Okay, great. And then on the rental side, does that change anything? Because I was reading all the documents last night. I was just a little confused on the rental side.
This applies to residential real estate. So rentals can no longer are again, all compensation offers on the MLS disappear. Paragraph 19 of the FAQs of NAR is where we modeled this, and it's really, 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 really clear. And again, going back to what I said, it's where the penalties of enforceability that are going to come that we're mostly paying attention to.
Okay.
Gotcha. All right. Thank you, Leo.
Thank you. Okay, Dan Fortin, you're up, and then I'm gonna let Charity jump to some of these questions she's organized from the online chat. All right, so go ahead, Dan.
Hey, Leo, thanks for being on. My question that I actually just thought of is, with the broker to broker going away, how does that affect referrals?
Thank you, Dan. That was a good one.
Yeah, that's a great one. As far as we understand, that has nothing to do with, because it's commission sharing on this transaction. Outside referral, as far as we know, still okay. If we hear anything else, we will tell you guys.
Okay. All right, good. That was simple. Charity, you have, I know I'm going a bit out of order here, but you've compiled a list through the chat, and I want to give you some opportunity here.
Yes, let me get Ernest. Ernest, can you ask your question? Because I promised that first that you'd be able to ask that question. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can go ahead and ask it. So, Leo, just a quick question. I know there's a lot of tech stacks out there right now currently trying to come up with solutions to be able to have a listing agent present a compensation on the front end of the website. Anything or any guidance there, anything EXP is going to do proactively to kind of restrict that, or are they just going to let whatever those tech providers roll out kind of fly?
Yeah, that's a great question. That is very much as of right now, we haven't made an official rule. I would tell you to be very wary and read paragraph 19 of the NAR Settlement FAQ, because it has like 4 or 5 provisions that say any technology that's using MLS data fields, be very careful. So your question is, have we issued any prohibitions? No, we have not. But again, we err on the side of, I don't want to tell you how to do your business. My only requirements are legal, ethical, and enforceable. Code of ethics, the rules that we're governed by. We are not attempted to be more restrictive than we need to be, which again seems kind of slightly different than how everything's being painted in the media. We're just saying broker to broker, no MLS is strictly prohibited. So we're just making sure that the paperwork we use is reflective of that. You guys can still have a seller direct compensation off the MLS like everybody else is discussing. And as paragraph 32 says, we're just being specific of how you do it.
I just want to jump in on this because we've definitely had some conversations with our NC brokers, and we know that not everybody here is in North Carolina, but many of us are. So the question was asked about using autoresponders specifically. So what they had mentioned was you can use autoresponders, have a number that people can text with the information. You can use the KV Core links, you can use QR codes. You just don't, that number shouldn't be on the MLS. There should be a step between, some kind of step between what's on the
two clicks is what NAR FAQ says. Two clicks.
As long as it's 2 clicks. So the first thing on the MLS is message listing agent with questions. You can say that. You can't say message listing agent about commission, right? So like you can't say anything about commission.
And Charity, this is the really important thing. Like I gave an example of a sentence that some MLSs have said it's okay, and then I saw immediately in the comments that my MLS said no. So again, this is the most painful part for us as a company, for me, because people are like, hey, this specific, it's like, it's touch and go, because what I tell you today on this call could change by tomorrow.
And I think Kendall, when she had her training that she did a couple days ago that Anna was talking to, was really amazing. Let me just reiterate again, I have put in the chat many times, if you guys want a recording of this, please text me, I will send it to you. So yes, it is recording, and yes, we're gonna send it out. Please text me so I have your number and your email address, and we'll make sure it's given out to you. So we will send.
We'll put it in fast forward. Yeah.
Yes, and number 2 is, I forgot what number 2 was, so never mind on that because I was reading something over here. But yes, we have a lot of, Kendall said, this is something that's really, really important. The law of your state obviously is not changing. So you have to follow the laws of your state. That's never gonna, well, it may change, but as of right now, this doesn't change the law. These are policies, okay? These are responses to the NAR settlement that National Association of Realtors is an association you belong to, and these policies are put in place to avoid future litigation and to comply not just with the letter of the law, but the spirit of the law. We want to go further to be able to say, hey, we are really in compliance as much as possible. But that, what she said is it only takes us 90% of the way, right? The NAR settlement stuff, then everyone's going to interpret it kind of differently. And then your specific brokerage policies are going to take you the rest of the way. And that's why people are hearing different things from different people, why different brokerages can do things different ways. We aren't responsible for what those brokerages do, right? We're trying to make sure that we as EXP are, I'm saying the royal, we are as protected as possible to make sure all of our agents are protected. Guys, the people who are putting their email addresses in the chat, I'm not going to be able to see those after this is over. So please send me a text message with your email addresses.
I'm handling that. Don't worry.
Thanks. Okay, so we have several questions, guys. Amazing questions. One of the big questions was how to manage bonuses by builders, because obviously those aren't always known, which also brings us to the same question of, what if I have the buyer has agreed to pay 2%, the seller has agreed to pay 3%. We know that the ruling has really said you can't go up, but can contracts be amended if the buyer agrees?
Yes, contracts can always be amended as long as the parties in the contract agree to the terms.
And even the forms agreeing to seller compensation, those can still be changed and negotiated throughout the contract, even during the contract. Is that correct? Those are terms now to be negotiated through the entire process of the contract. Is that correct?
Well, one of the goals of the settlement was to have both the seller and the buyer be able to actively negotiate. That was literally one of the cruxes of the plaintiff's attorneys, that people were not being able to participate in this.
One person had, okay, and you actually just said this because someone had said that statement, seller is willing to entertain any request, put in the offer. Can we put that in the MLS? But then you had just said that in some MLSs you can, some that you can't. So
no, so I said there was a bunch that have said yes to me one-on-one. And then as I said it, one of the comments was my MLS said no, right? So again, I would proactively call because I'm telling you there's going to be instant fines being given out by MLSs. That's and effectively that one statement is the yes and no toggle that CRMLS and several other MLSs have amended and put in as the way to communicate.
Okay, perfect. A lot of the questions are around teams, or for example, if I'm out of town and I have an emergency and I need a friend to open the door, does that person need a buyer's broker for that day? I think you had mentioned this, or Kendall had mentioned this. If someone is expecting to get compensated, then that's where buyer's broker needs to come in.
Yeah, sure, because that's so again, going back to enforceability, the buy side of this is we as the brokerage are not going to be able to pay the agent who was not on that disclosure, right? So I'm sorry, disclosures, buyer disclosures, the how most states handle it, but the buyer broker agreement. So it's all about enforceability and ability to pay.
So as long as we all know it, just to be clear, because there has been some questions about apps like Shawami, and I don't know if this is nationwide, in North Carolina specifically, you cannot have an agent from another brokerage show your buyers if you're under buyer's agency contract. So I don't know if that's nationwide, but is that
yeah. Let's actually address that one per state, because Shawami operates in some states, doesn't operate in other states, and then that agent's being compensated for a specific act, right? Not for the actual consummation of the property, because they're going to get their fee whether that property gets purchased or not. So that's a different topic, but let's make sure we don't confuse folks.
I think that's where a lot of people are coming in, because they're hearing some things from their state, they're hearing some things from the brokerage, which is going to happen, right? If someone comes to an open house and says that they have an agent and a buyer broker agreement with their agent, can we still allow them in? Do we need to see the buyer's broker agreement? I think we've already said that if you're a seller sub agent, you can host an open house and not need a buyer broker with the buyer coming in. So they are allowed to see the house during an open house. Is that correct? Like, we don't have to.
Yep. So the information we have of today is that open houses are seller representation activity. But again, let's check with your state and let's check with your local boards. But that's the information I've seen at scale.
Okay.
Really good.
Can he say that again, please?
Yes, open house activity is considered seller representation behavior.
So if you are the listing agent and you have somebody else from your brokerage hosting that open house as a sub agent of the seller or doing seller services, we are holding the house open. People, unrepresented buyers can come in, but if they start to give you any motivation or decide they want to use that agent as their agent, that's where it needs to convert into some kind of broker's representation on the buy side. Is that correct?
Just like before.
Yep. And then we had a comment that I think really sums up one of the main reasons why we started to do, we wanted to do this conversation today. Someone said, you realize agents will not show our listings because it's all over the place that we will not pay co-op brokers.
So first of all, yeah. So my guess is we will see a lot of companies go to this exact model because it's probably the best prevention way. But first of all, the Code of Ethics clearly instructs that we are to show the properties. We live in a world where portals are where consumers find the listings. Right? I think statistically it's 80–90% of the properties that buyers ultimately buy, they found themselves on Zillow, Homes, Realtor, all of them. And then they send it to their consumer and say, I want to see this house. Every agent cannot advertise compensation. So that buyer is going to make the choice to then call the listing agent, have a conversation with you, no different than any other listing agent, and you're going to answer the same way they are, right? If the seller is offering it, you will tell them what it is. If the seller says put it in the offer, they will do that. Again, what that is misinformation by competitors who are either scared or trying to take this very confusing moment and try to, I think, use ugliness to recruit, which, I think in the long run will not bode well for people when their companies issue policies very similar or don't. But the reality is consumers will want to see what's available in the marketplace. You guys can offer compensation directed from the seller, just like they would with broker to broker. Like, it sounds like semantics, but it is materially different. It effectively will do what the others are doing, but I just literally, the crux of the plaintiff's attorney was litigating us for commission sharing. That's the actual basis of that. Why would we turn around and do the exact thing that they litigated us for? There are other mechanisms, which we provided to you, to do effectively what that serves, but actually giving the seller the control and giving the buyer the control. Because at the end of the day, I would say, what is this obsession with getting the buyer advertise fee out there? Because you're only allowed to earn what's in there. You're only allowed to earn what's in your buyer rep agreement. This is happening. I think there is an enormous amount of fear mongering right now from folks who are trying to do workarounds and keep everything status quo. That is not an EXP thing. This is happening at scale at MLSs. This is happening at scale on August 17th. And we're just trying to prepare you guys with the best tools in order to navigate and combat this.
Yeah, good. Charity, are you sufficient on your end with the
I mean,
questions?
we still have some hands raised, but those are kind of the main questions that we saw in the chat since earlier.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, Scott Wendell, you've been very patient.
Yeah, I was just asking about the buyer broker agreements for a sliding scale commission because we don't know what we're going to be paid. So
that's a
can
great
we
question.
2 to 5%, 2 to 7%?
Yeah, Scott, that is a great question. That was my very first question on that weekend. And I asked all the attorneys, and it's an unequivocally no. As a practitioner, I went to attorneys and said, hey, could I say a floor of X and then up to something else if I can negotiate? And the answer is unequivocally no. There has to be a fee in there where it's a dollar amount or a percentage of purchase price. You can agree to take less, like if at the end of the negotiation there's contributions that need to be made or just to get the deal done. If you want to go up, as we understand it, the only way to do that is through an amendment with the buyer agreeing to it.
Okay.
Menu of service is allowed, right? That's one of the things that we've been instructed. You can say, I take this percentage or this dollar amount for this service, and then I take this, like new construction.
For the service, yes.
Is showing.
Yes.
So you can have a menu of services, but you can't have variable commission.
Yeah, Scott, what you specifically can't say is, I will take what I can negotiate. I will take, this, you promised me a minimum of this and I'll take whatever I can get. It's either X, like a menu of services is X, right? Charity, it's a very specific as to what you're accepting for the services rendered. But let's go back to a listing presentation. Like you say, I'm willing to list the house for X. And for that fee, you get a sign in the ground, lockbox, drone video, photography. You get X services for Y fee.
Okay.
Good. Okay. All right. I want to be respectful of time, Leo. Nona?
Yep. Yeah, I do have a hard stop.
Okay. All right. So then should we have time for one more question or a hard stop now?
Yeah. No, go ahead.
Okay. All right. Nona, make it good. You're the last one here. I think so. Nona going once, going twice. All right. Moving on to Trish Kirby, from Cape Coral. Final question, please.
In regard to concessions with putting, and I'm not with EXP, so I really appreciate your colleague who shared this with others today. So this has been very informative with all the misinformation out there. But with us putting these commissions under concessions, how is this going to be handled as an industry when appraisers will not take compensation into value, but they will hit a value for concessions? So now we're going to be
Tricia,
lower.
So this is a super interesting question because I think this goes actually to the crux of your conversation with a seller. And I would use the talk track of ultimately your net execution is what we're discussing, right? If a house is listed for $500,000 and there's a seller concession of $15,000. And then there was a house across the street that sold for $485 with no concessions. The seller's netting the same amount of money. And so this is part of the education process during the listing presentation to say, look, and by the way, this is part of your fiduciary responsibility. When you are showing comps, and Trish, like, again, what MLSs will display going forward is actually a very important question, in my opinion, right? Because when you show 2 or 3 comparable sales, it is going to be very important to say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, for that sales price, that seller actually paid out X amount in concession, consideration, compensation, whatever word we're choosing to use because of the way it's disclosed, is going to be part of your listing presentation to say, in order to get that price, 2 or 3 of those sellers did pay that stuff out and disclosed it.
And I understand, and that's fantastic, but how are we going to be able to identify in the MLS when they're putting concessions in there as to whether it was really concessions for a commission or if it was concessions for a home inspection went wrong? How do we know what it was for?
Yeah, and again, this is probably the best example, Trish, of we will see how this plays out, right? Because the thing that I promised you is people will continue to buy and sell homes regardless, right? So the new situations, the new rules that come out, and I promise you that this will continue to evolve. Since April and May, I've been calling this next 6 months the messy middle, right? As we collectively as an industry figure out what works, what doesn't work, and keep going.
Yeah, well, certainly appreciate your feedback. Can I just ask one other piece with the specificity of the commission on the buyer broker agreements? I know we can't do sliding scale, but like I watched Kendall's the other day. It is okay for us to say X% for resales and X% for new construction. Can we delineate?
That's what, yeah, that's what Charity was going to about a menu of services.
Okay, thank you very much, and I appreciate this webinar today.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Leo, and thank you for holding over a few minutes here. We appreciate this time that you've given us. Is there any final closing thoughts you'd like to leave us with as we wrap up here, Leo?
Yes, that I do something very noble. I think that American families need our help and support. And if we are this confused, who are the experts, can you imagine what consumers are about to experience with all the misinformation out there? So have patience, have grace for our competitors who are just as confused as we are collectively, right? There is going to be a lot of more confusion, but there will be a day sooner than we probably realize where this is, this is just how we do things. And this is the new normal we operate in.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that empathy for our fellow real estate agents and seek to understand and coming with, what is the word? Curiosity to the conversation is the best way to approach, because this is a time when we need to come together collectively as real estate agents, because this can be quite a polarizing conversation. And what a better way and a better timing for us to really come together as a community, as realtors than now. So thank you everyone for being on this call. Thank you for your seek to understand mindset. And for those of you that have additional questions, I have posted in the chat a few times here. You can email Erica, ERIKA at Sayward Team. If you'd like to get a recording of this, it will be posted in Fast Forward Movement. But we will not be copying the email addresses that were in the chat. It's just quite a volume of information. We had pushing 650 people on this call here today. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you again, Leo. You're doing such a superb job. I am so excited to have you at the helm leading this way. I am so proud and so blessed. All of us feel this way to have you leading the way. Thank you again.
I appreciate that. Thank you, guys. And again, if
Thank
there's
you,
any
Leo.
confusion, please reach out. We're here
Thank
for
you.
you guys.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you.
Great day.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. All right.
Thanks, everyone.
That was wonderful. I left that email in the chat again, if you need to copy it, Erica at saywardteam.com.
That email one more time.
It's in the chat, Erica, ERIKA at saywardteam.com.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great job, guys.
Charity, I'll reach out to you in a minute here.
Talk to you
I
soon.
just wanna leave it
Do you want me to turn this off?
Email.
See Erica.
I'm just leaving it up so people can copy that email if they need to.
Can you place it in the chat again? I don't see it.
Yes, boss.
Thank you.
Thank you. I've been looking for it.
I thought that was Charity's voice saying that. That's why I called her boss. All right. Oh, I guess boss. Mhm.
All right, good.
Charity, are you still here? Oh, she's gone.